Dear friends, before we begin, a few commercial breaks. Commercial break even before you begin? I guess so, right? Opening sponsor. Number one, we are finishing our course right now. And what that means is, it's pretty sad. Next week, we're not going to be meeting on Wednesday night going into Hanukkah. But this was a very special course. I want to thank you all for being here with us. And I want to, as always, encourage you to join us for our next course. And I want to share with you a little bit about next course. And I mentioned last week that I'm going to make a promotion to help all of you make that choice a little bit easier. So here's a little bit about the upcoming course.
Master the book that defines Judaism. Decoding the Talmud. This is the Talmud. With 2 million words, 523 chapters, and 60 volumes, it's Judaism's monumental guide to life and study. This enormous work, compiled over centuries, records the evolving debates among the Jewish sages as they interpret the Torah and clarify its laws. It was banned, banished, and burned, but it has endured. And today, its wisdom continues to instruct, intrigue, and inspire. Join us on a new 6-part crash course on the Talmud. Explore its history, method, and substance, and unravel its timeless wisdom for yourself.
So this is what is coming up in February. We're beginning the first Wednesday of February. February 5th, I believe, is the date. 6 weeks, same gig. If you've been enjoying these classes, you're going to enjoy this too. And this is great, great stuff. Decoding the Talmud. Here's the website. The website's already live. The registration page is already live. And if you register, let's do 2 weeks. If you register, I'm going to also email this to you. If you register by the end of Hanukkah, you got 2 weeks, you will be able to use a 20% off discount to help you make the move a little bit, make it a little bit less painful. It's Hanukkah Geld, my Hanukkah Geld gift to you. Yes. So when you register, and I'm going to email this to you as well, but there's a code Hanukkah with a ch, not a Hanukkah. Hanukkah, all uppercase, the word Hanukkah, and the code will work. Yeah, I'll send you an email. But I'll send you an email, absolutely. All right, so that's about that, decoding the Talmud. What else? That's that, okay, that's number one. Number two is like this. We just talking about emails. I just sent out an email last night. We just officially launched our annual end-of-year campaign for Chabad of Bloomfield Hills. And this is raising the funds as we go into another year. We want to be even stronger, more present, and more active, reaching out to more in our community. So we have a goal, which I don't know if we're going to get to, but we got to go big. We want to try to raise $140,000. And I want to ask all of you to please join us with a donation and try to think big along with us. It doesn't have to be paid out right now, so feel free to also make a commitment for 2025. But the idea is that God willing, we'll be able to be here once again for the Jewish community, bigger, prouder, and stronger with all of your help. So I want to thank you all, number one, all those who have already donated, so many of you have, and we'll continue to do even more. So thank you, and you'll be getting more emails from me, maybe even some calls from me. So if I hound you about it, you're pre-warned. Okay.
I wanted to ask you, are you going to have a visit to New York in May? You did that last week.
Yes. We're doing that as well. Should we do another commercial break?
I'll call that. When is it?
Okay, so we don't even have the leaves over here. Last year, yes, we're going to be sending out the emails. I plan on doing it like right after New Year's, but I'll get it to you already now. We're planning on doing in May. It's the first weekend of May. Our annual, we joined the Shabbaton. It's called Shabbat in the Heights, in Crown Heights. It is an absolutely amazing weekend. Last year we took a few people, and they said it was like on a cruise just on land. But it's an amazing time on practically and spiritually. They cap the program at 500 attendees because they don't want it to get too big, and even that's big, but they want it to still feel Hamish. So it's also limited. We got to catch in. So I really want to take a larger group because it was just so amazing last year. So stay tuned for that also, Shabbat in the Heights. And if I do too many more announcements, It's just going to all become white noise at some point. Okay, and we got a class to do over here. So, dear friends, let us actually get going for tonight's class. Begin with dedicating tonight's class in loving memory of Mr. Dennis Dems, Dr. Jerry and Joanne Lesson, and Mr. Ryan Dems. I want to thank the Lesson family for sponsoring this course. And thank God, 6 weeks in, we've all been having a great time. Only one more class to go. We'll see if it lives up to the reputation. Okay, we're talking tonight about a hard topic, probably the hardest topic from the 6 weeks, because who didn't go through this part of relationships, which is a little bit difficult. When there's real hurt, and if you remember the past few classes, I've always been telling you, we're not talking about when there's real betrayal, real hurt, real pain. We didn't want to talk about them in the previous classes, which were about positivity and about disagreements and about influencing and, as part of a relationship, helping somebody work through one of their blind spots. But tonight we got to deal with the real problems, which is when we are in a relationship. It could be in any sphere of a relationship, from the most intimate relationships to even, the more peripheral circles of social circles. But it happens that there's going to be something which causes tremendous pain, tremendous hurt, tremendous insult, and maybe even a betrayal, where somebody feels, this was too much. I was hurt too much. And where do we go from there? What is the process of forgiveness, of reconciliation, and all stuff like that? On the one hand, all of us have been through this, which makes this very personal. And also, part of the difficulty over here is that no two cases are the same. Every single relationship is unique. The exact dynamics of every single situation is unique. So we can never come and give a boilerplate, canned response, a canned guide. This is exactly what it should look like. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. But this is the general framework that we're going to be working with. And I just want to get a few examples up over here. What are a few examples of betrayals that will help give us an idea of what we're going to be tackling tonight? Number one, a spouse lies. Okay? That is a relationship. I don't know if it's a breaker, but it's definitely, right? That's a crack in a relationship. That's definitely a betrayal. And here's another example. One of your parents disrespect your spouse. Okay, 1 second. We've got an issue right now over here. A friend failed to be there for you in your time of need. You thought they were a good friend. I don't know, you went through a loss. They didn't text you. They didn't come to visit you. 1 second, I thought we were friends. That could be very, very painful. Once again, that's a betrayal. An acquaintance, somebody you know, you need a favor. It's really not a big ask, and they're just blowing you off. You take it very personally. An acquaintance makes an insensitive joke about you. Once again, right? That's real pain, and you start questioning. I thought we were friends. Are we maybe not friends anymore? And just another example, a coworker disparages you publicly. You thought you had their back. You thought you had a good relationship. What's going on over here? And all of these are things where you are spinning your wheels, and all of a sudden you're wondering, 1 second, are we in a good relationship over here? Okay, it's a very painful subject. It's a very painful subject. And may I add, who of us have not been at some point on the receiving end of this type of hurt? But if we could also be a little bit honest with ourselves, I'm sure there were times when we were also on the giving end of that stick, right? That either unwittingly or in a moment of weakness, we caused somebody this type of pain. And that's part of it, right? We're not only approaching today's class as from the victim's perspective, to use that word, but from both sides. We are human, and this is a very big part of relationships. What do we do when there has been such a break in a relationship, where there's real hurt, real betrayal? That is what we want to deal with. Now, generally speaking, whenever such a thing happens, there is a crossroads that we are on. We could take this in two directions. Either the relationship slowly starts unraveling, pulling apart, and the relationship is never going to look like the way it was before. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that there's a way that we could actually approach this, mend this, grow past this. And this is one of the difficult parts of relationships. How many relationships got broken and they never even looked back because there was one time there was a slight and that was that. You know, it's also interesting. Part of I'm not a Midwesterner. I'm not a Detroiter. So I'm a little bit of a foreigner. I'm an invader over here. So I'm from New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey, where all the UFOs are. Okay. I feel bad. We're like missing out on all the action. Let's get some UFOs here, guys. You know what I'm saying? Okay. In Princeton, barely anybody is like a generational Princetonian. People moved for a job. They got a professor job in the city. People are always coming and moving. It's very weird to find even one spouse who says, yeah, I was born here. No one was born there. Everybody is moving. I'm saying that's how it works on the East Coast. Come to Detroit, all of a sudden, I was born here, my father was born here, my mother was born here, my grandfather was born here, my great-great-great, I don't know, founded the city. I don't know. Like, everybody's got like long, deep roots over here. So it's an interesting thing. Not Alex Obadinsky. We're the only two people who could relate to the idea that, okay. All right. Not only, but it's generally speaking, this is a very, very deep-rooted community. Okay. What am I trying to say by this? The interesting thing is that one of the things I've slowly seen with time is that there is a lot of old family beef that sticks around for a long time. Like, my grandfather was in a fight with his cousin, and now if we walk into a restaurant and we see our third cousins there, we turn around. We don't ever want to look at them. It's like, whoa, this is extreme stuff. You know what I'm talking about over here? And it's sometimes over the stupidest stuff. I don't want to give any too much details. Like, I recently heard of they both live here in Detroit. They won't look at each other because they're both grandparents, but their grandmother offended one of them. Don't ask. And till today, it's like the friction lives on. I guess it's one of the part of the joys of families just staying in one place for so long. Okay, so there's generational family hurt and betrayals. And it's like, yeah, it's very, very interesting. Okay, so I feel like here in Detroit, we're like, it's especially, which way are we going to go with this? Are we going to try to deal with it and grow from this and be able to solve the issue, work through it, or not? Well, also, sometimes you could say, actually, walking away from the relationship maybe actually is the best thing to do right now. Maybe there's been abuse over here. It's actually a real issue. We do need to leave the situation. I'm not saying not, but the point is, we need to have a little bit of a guide. We need to have an understanding. How are we approaching this? What is the process of reconciliation? What's the process of forgiveness? And what does that even mean? So I want to ask you that question over here. It's in your books on page 234. Let's get our books open over here. And by the way, these books are wonderful. And the JLI office puts a lot of effort that it should be full color and should look beautiful. So like that, after the class, you're not saying, okay, I'm done with my textbook. But it should be something that lives on your bookshelf and you could always pull it off. And it's a beauty to look at and a way of reading the teachings from our Torah. And that way we could always remind ourselves, re-inspire ourselves by these teachings. So, okay, page 234. That's an interesting question. Which one do you think is harder? Asking for forgiveness or granting forgiveness? Which one's harder? Let's do it by raise of hand. Who says granting forgiveness is who says asking for forgiveness is harder? Asking. The ask is harder. What do you say? Okay. What about granting forgiveness? Who says granting forgiveness is harder? We're like 50-50. Someone told me, and I actually wanted to look, I forgot to look this up before class. Someone told me that for men, it's harder to ask for forgiveness. For women, it's harder to grant forgiveness. You ever heard that one? I'm like, that sounds way too stereotypical. I'm not buying that unless we're signed out from Zoom. What do we do? See what's going on over here? All right. We're back on regular programming. Okay. In any case, I don't know. I wanted to look up if there's an actual study done on that, or if that's because it sounds very too stereotypical. No. Yeah, men, it's harder to own up and to ask forgiveness. Women's harder to. Yeah, I don't know about that.
There's a study done by a female researcher.
Okay, let's just stop that. Okay. Okay. But it is difficult. No, it's hard to ask for forgiveness, It takes courage to, man up and really ask. Granting, if you're really hurt, that's also, these things are not simple. These are not simple things. It isn't just a matter of saying, say this, say that. It's like with little kids, right? Go say I'm sorry. You go say, okay, say I forgive you. It's when there's real hurt. And really what we're getting to over here is the next question. What does the word forgiveness even mean? What do we mean when we say the word forgiveness is actually sometimes used in very, very different ways? There's a good few years ago, there was a story going around the Jewish world of a Jewish woman, a very elderly Jewish woman. If I'm not mistaken, she even lived in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. And she decided to unilaterally, she did it publicly, called the media, decided that she is going to forgive. She was a Holocaust survivor, survived the camps. She is going to forgive the Nazis for what they did to her and to all of her family, even those who have perished in the Holocaust. And she said what she said about why she feels compelled or why she feels it's the time to do it, why she feels it's the right time to do it. That's very, very interesting. First of all, there's a lot of ethical questions that come up over there. One second, this is a unilateral forgiveness. You're giving forgiveness and the other party is not even coming and giving an apology. It's like, how does that work? Can you just say, I forgive you when there's no even dialogue, between the two parties? The one who hurt. And then also, who even said that you could give forgiveness? Are there certain things that maybe are beyond forgiveness? What are the ethics of that? And then you're giving forgiveness on behalf of people who are not even here. And you're saying, I'm forgiving on their behalf. They died, they were killed. Who said? So she said that she wants to be able to get this rock off of her chest. And in her final years, she should be able to totally move past this dark part of her life and her family history. So one second, is the forgiveness about actually wholeheartedly forgiving the other party? Is it just about getting rocks off of your own chest? It's a very, very murky term, forgiveness. What does that really mean? And what does that really look like? Okay, so what we're going to be doing in today's class, we're going to be doing 2 stages. Number 1, we're going to talk a little bit more philosophically. Why forgive? What is the Jewish model of forgiveness? And as we're going to see, forgiveness is not understood by everybody to mean the same thing. And we're first going to have the why of forgiveness, which is, again, a little bit more of the philosophical underpinnings of how Judaism approaches the art of forgiveness. Once we have that down pat, and then we're going to get to the how of forgiveness. And we're going to learn a 5 or 6-step program, which is in Jewish law, actually, it's very interesting. This is a part of Jewish law. The halachic criteria, the exact formula, how forgiveness is done, what's the right way to do it, what's the wrong way to do it. And we'll also try to bust some myths about how we generally tend to think about forgiveness as we do that. So, and once again, before we jump in, I just want to mention once again, no 2 cases are the same. Some of what we're going to be teaching over here applies to all cases. Some you'll say, I have a case where it doesn't apply properly, and that's okay. It's at the end of the day, because it's so sensitive, no 2 disagreements are the same. People are not the same. The circumstances are not the same. But this is at least giving us a general framework that I think we could apply to most cases. There's always going to be outliers, extreme cases. With that, let's get going. Let's begin with the why of forgiveness. Why should we forgive? We started our course by introducing our 2 main protagonists of the course, our godly soul and the animal soul. Animal soul and godly soul. And what we discovered is that the animal soul is inherently really not good at relationships. It doesn't have any natural sense of connection with other beings, with other people. Versus the godly soul is the opposite. It's not self-centered. It's really other-centered. It's beyond its self-centered. It's moving beyond itself. Relationships become a lot more natural. It's a natural fit for the godly soul. This whole issue of conflict, reconciliation, and forgiveness have a whole different approach depending which soul you approach this from. And I want to begin by sharing with you a little great Jewish folktale. And we're going to do it via video. So Elke, can I bother you to get the lights? And let's check out this video over here.
The story is told that Maimonides once had a disagreement with the other wise men in the court of the Egyptian sultan. The wise men contended that with sufficient training, it would be possible to change the nature of an animal, training it to be as gracious, polite, and as giving as a human being. Maimonides argued that it was impossible to completely change an animal's nature. The wise men spent many months training a cat to serve as a butler. They dressed the cat up in a little suit and trained it to walk on its hind legs. They taught the cat to greet people, escort them to their seats, and serve them food and drink. They then invited Maimonides to a banquet where they intended to demonstrate their accomplishment and to prove to him that an animal can be trained to behave like a human being. The cat graciously greeted Maimonides and guided him to his table. Once seated, Maimonides removed a small box from his pocket. From the box, he took a mouse and dropped it on the floor. Trays and dishes smashed to the ground as the cat abandoned his role as butler and scampered speedily after the mouse. And the debate was effectively concluded.
Interesting story. You can't teach, how does it work? You can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Is that right? Old dog, that's what it is, right? Could you really change an animal? Maybe temporarily. You can't really change them. You can't break them out of their nature. Which is, there's a lot to talk about in this story, but let's kind of bring it home to what we want to talk about over here. We all have also a very instinctive and impulsive little animal inside of us, right? The animal soul. The animal soul, naturally, there's no room for other people in its life. I mean, if you look at a baby, as cute and as lovable as babies are, they're also extremely rude, right? Know what I'm talking about? Meaning, a baby is not born with a strong sense of, I love other people, I want to connect with other people, I want to bring other people into my life. No, it's very self-centered. I got my own life. As it gets older and it learns that there are some good benefits from social interactions, okay, it starts getting into them and it starts accepting them. But it really is against its nature. The animal soul is always really, it's uncomfortable to start going beyond itself. Conflict does a very similar thing to what happened to the mouse, to the cat in the video. It triggers a very similar reaction to our animal soul. Our animal soul is ready to kind of make concessions, it's training, learning how to be social, and really that's what it is. You know, I guess it's a question for Freud. You know, who are we naturally? Are we naturally good social people or are we horrible social people? Are we naturally nice or are we naturally rude? You know, it's an interesting thing. But if you want to be very honest, the animal soul really is born with zero interest in other people, zero interest in making other people feel good, zero interest in being giving and empathetic, et cetera, et cetera. It only does that because, you know, it realizes and it learns that, you know, maybe this is a good thing in life. You know, you don't want to be antisocial. No one's going to like you. You don't want to be somebody who's not nice. You know, it's not nice. Okay, but it really is the animal soul walking away from its essential nature. But then when there's conflict and when there's hurt and there's pain in a relationship, the animal soul retreats back to itself. And it says, oh no, see, I knew it all along. This doesn't work. And I was willing to give to the relationship and I'm done with this. And it gets very egotistic and it digs in its heels in that ego. And it takes the hurt in a very painful and even a very, in a very immature way, right? We all know our animal soul. It gets hurt, it gets a little bit immature, it gets petty, and it retreats back to its core self. And starts questioning the relationships. I don't even know if we ever really liked each other. I don't even know. And you know, it really digs in on that whole thing. That's what happens to the animal soul. Why? Because the animal soul is essentially not into relationships. It's not really its cup of tea. So it's very easy for the animal soul to just to break relationships. The alienation, I'm not interested anymore, you're hurting me, we're done with each other. Okay. Does the animal soul give forgiveness? Is the animal soul interested in forgiving you? No. What does it say? Too bad, right? Meaning, I don't need to forgive you. Don't do me any favors. I'm not going to do for you any favors. Goodbye. Never have to look at each other again. Oh. The animal soul could be convinced to start offering forgiveness. But it comes with a very, very interesting twist. Why does it want to give forgiveness? Because somebody could sit down with the animal soul and say, listen, it's in your best interest. Give forgiveness. You know why? It's like that you could let go and move on with life. Like the cliche goes, resentment towards somebody else is allowing them to live in your brain rent-free. Right? You ever heard that one? Come on, you're just hurting yourself. You'll have a better life if you give forgiveness. Oh, so the animal soul says, I'll have a better life if I give forgiveness? No problem, we'll give forgiveness. But why is it giving forgiveness? Not because I care to solve this problem. Not because I want that we should be back on good terms. It's like a personal coping mechanism. It's all about me. Nothing personal about you. I'm not forgiving you. I'm not kind of forgiving myself. This is my way of dealing with this and allowing my life to continue in comfort. And essentially, that's one of the big arguments that's given today for forgiveness, which I'm actually not going to reject this argument. It's a good argument. It is a good point. Forgiveness is pretty cathartic. It helps you heal. It helps you grow. It helps you close this tab. We're done. We're settled. So it's personally comforting. This is one model of forgiveness, and I want to begin reading it. Text 1, page 236. Heidi, you're always the one who helps me out of here. What did we do last week? Where did we start from? You don't even remember? So then just take it away. You got it. Don't worry. Text, page 236.
Picture the crowded screen in front of a harried air traffic controller. Picture the chaos in the room and the jumble of planes on the screen. Now imagine that your unresolved grievances are the planes on that screen and have been circling for days and weeks on end. Most of the other planes have landed, but your unresolved grievances continue to take up precious airspace, draining resources that may be needed in an emergency. Having them on the screen forces you to work harder and increases the chance for accidents. The grievance planes become a source of stress, and burnout is often the result. Forgiveness is the peace you learn to feel when you allow these circling planes to land. Forgiveness is for you and not for the offender. Forgiveness is taking back your power. Forgiveness is taking responsibility for how you feel. Forgiveness is about your healing and not about the people who hurt you. Forgiveness is a trainable skill, just like learning how to throw a baseball. Forgiveness helps you get control over your feelings. Forgiveness can improve your mental and physical health.
Very interesting text. Everything it says here is 100% true. But we're going to analyze this for a second. The whole way forgiveness is framed is, it is all about you. You. I couldn't care less for this other person that hurt my feelings. I couldn't care less about them. If they're hurt for the rest of their lives, good for them. The forgiveness is purely all about me. Just think, every single sentence over here. It's the peace you learn to feel. Forgiveness is for you. It's like, they're saying it so explicitly. Forgiveness is taking back your power. Forgiveness is you taking responsibility, owning again how you feel. It's about your healing. It's not about them. It's not about helping the other person and helping them also grow. It's not, it's your healing. It improves your mental health. It's a very, very self-serving coping mechanism to give forgiveness. And basically the idea is, if it will help me, I'll forgive. And if not, then, I'm not interested in forgiving you. The opposite, let it haunt you for the rest of your life that you broke this relationship. I'm happy with it haunting you. That makes me actually feel good, that you'll feel the pain. This is what motivates the animal soul. This is the language of the animal soul. Now, once again, I'm not saying that this is not legitimate. This is good. This is all valid. We're not rejecting this, but we're also understanding it in context. This is what speaks to the animal soul. But then there's another question. Now that we learned that there's the way the animal soul enters into relationships, and there's the way the godly soul enters into relationships, and that they see relationships differently. All right, well, let's talk about forgiveness. We see how the animal soul looks at forgiveness. What about the godly soul? How does the godly soul look at forgiveness? So the Talmud says something which is quite radical. In the context of holding a grudge and forgiveness, and when one person hurts another person, let's read text 2, page 237. Jeff, from the Jerusalem Talmud, let's check this out.
The Torah states, "You shall neither take revenge from nor bear a grudge against the members of your people." But how can we be expected to forgive in this way? Consider this example. If while cutting meat you cut your hand, would you retaliate in kind against the offending hand?
All right, very interesting imagery. Your right hand cuts your left hand. The left hand is not all of a sudden waking up and saying, oh, got to take revenge. Why not? No. It's not because the right hand says, you know what, I respect you. I like the way you look. I like your talents. I don't want to mess with you. No, that's not what it's saying. It intuitively feels we're one. You're not helping anything by hurting. You're hurting yourself. Why would you go hurt your left hand? It just makes no, you don't even need a good argument like that. Now, one second. The amazing thing over here is that the Talmud is applying this to two separate people. Right hand to a left hand, that's obvious. The Talmud is saying when you feel that hurt, and you feel the need to even take revenge and to hold on to that pain against another Jew, what are you essentially doing? You're hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself. Now, why would the Talmud say this? Why would we apply this logic to two separate people, two different people, two independent people? Right? What's making the Talmud think this way? Yes, Marshall.
So you just said another Jew, and the quote is against the members of your people. Shouldn't we apply this to all other people?
That's a very good question. Is what we're saying specifically about a Jew or to all people? And the answer is that there's definitely a much stronger sense of relationship that Judaism puts within the Jewish people. That's not to say to the exclusion of other people, but it's a further degree of relationship, right? It doesn't mean that there's still not a sense of unity, of oneness, of camaraderie, of responsibility, but there's definitely degrees. There's definitely degrees. So what would make the Talmud speak this way? Text 3. Let's read text 3. This is a Kabbalistic text. Amy, let's check this out. Page 238.
Inherent unity. All souls are united as one. It is therefore appropriate to desire good for others, to be happy for their gain, and to consider their dignity as important as your own. For you and they are truly synonymous. For that reason, we are commanded, love your fellow as yourself.
This is a very powerful idea. Our bodies and our animal souls see other bodies and other animal souls as totally separate, independent things, even competing things. Essentially, every single animal soul is competing with every single other animal soul. We're all in the same rat race, right? We're all racing against each other. But the godly soul, the divine soul, sees things very, very differently. If you could sit down for a coffee with your godly soul and listen in a little bit to its intuition, how does it see the world? It feels an inherent unity and a bond and a oneness with other souls. That is the nature of souls. Let's put up over here a little bit of a graphic. Why? All souls are anchored in the one God, and therefore there's an inherent unity that they feel. And by the way, right, just like we saw, when a soul has the ability to connect with God, it actually helps the soul feel that bond with other people as well. Very, very interesting rule according to Jewish spirituality. If somebody says they love God but they don't love other Jews, it's a sign that they don't love God either. Because one of the things that happens when a soul connects with God is it becomes inevitable. You start feeling more love for other souls as well. So if you have one and you don't have the other, it means it's a lie. It's very, very interesting. It means it's a deception. It's not true. The more that our souls have the ability to express itself, and the more our souls have the ability to connect with its true identity, one of the things that happens is it starts feeling the oneness between other souls. As much as the animal soul is very, very comfortable saying, I'm done with you, I don't want to ever look at you again, I'm happy to cut off this relationship, I'm happy to hold the grudge. As much as the animal soul, that's its comfort zone, the godly soul is the exact opposite. It sees a deep connection with other souls. That's what's natural to it. Separation from another soul is very unnatural for it. So there's a whole different perspective that's happening over here between the godly soul and the animal soul. The godly soul, when it is in a place of pain, and when there's a severed relationship, the godly soul feels the opposite. This is so unnatural. This is so unhealthy. This is so wrong. We have to fix this. The godly soul is looking for forgiveness, not because I want to have a better life. My way of having good life is by officially closing my issue with you, so I'll forgive you just for my good. No. The godly soul says, no, this is wrong. It's wrong for you. I feel this is unnatural. We shouldn't be disconnected. I want to be connected again with you. Or at least I don't want to have this issue between us. I don't want to have this wedge between us. It's a whole different issue. In other words, the animal soul is looking to forgive so that it can move away. Can we forgive? Okay, good. Now we could forgive and forget, and I could forget you. Let's forgive and forget. Let me move on from you. I'm done with you. Let's just try to finish that. I'll delete you from my contacts. Just done. The godly soul is looking to forgive, to connect. Now think about it a little bit like siblings. It happens. Siblings could have fights. They don't really talk to each other anymore. No sibling is ever comfortable to be in that zone. We've all been there, right? We've all been there when there's friction with one of our siblings. You're never comfortable in that space, right? You know it's wrong. You know this is just not the way it's meant to be. Siblings are meant to be speaking to each other. Siblings are meant to love each other. Siblings are meant to have trust with each other. Now, if there's a guy in the street who I happen to, he threw me a comment, I don't care to know the guy ever again, right? But if it's a sibling, no, this is wrong. We need to get back on the same page. That's how souls think about everybody else, not just siblings. And this is again, I'm quoting it in the context of Jews, but the Torah tells that all Jews are really siblings. Think about it in that way. When two Jews don't get along, this is not just two people, come on, maybe just not the right fit, move on with life. The godly soul feels something's really, really wrong over here. We've got an issue. And it's not about me being able to move on, it's that this is wrong. We're supposed to be connected. This is not the right way. I want to put this up over here. And then we're going to expound on this a little bit more. The animal soul forgives for personal benefit. If you could explain to an animal soul that it's in its best interest to forgive, okay, I'll forgive. Not because I'm here to try to help you. I'm not doing it for your sake. I'm doing it for my sake. The godly soul, on the other hand, he's forgiving because he wants to return to the inherent unity. By the way, in Hebrew, a soul is really feminine, so it's really she. Even in a man, the neshama is feminine. So a soul really is a she. Okay, but this is the difference. And really this flows from a deeper idea. In the animal soul, conflict is natural. I don't need to know you. The most natural place for the animal soul is, I don't need you, I don't want to know you, we're not connected. The godly soul is the exact opposite. The conflict is unnatural. Being one with you, that's natural. That's what's right. And this becomes two very, very major differences in motivation of what is forgiveness built around. Are we just trying to help ourselves cope and have a better life and help our own mental health? Or are we here for a holistic, a more spiritual pursuit of forgiveness? This idea, the different ways of looking at souls, the way our animal soul looks at forgiveness, the way our godly soul does, is reflected in such a beautiful teaching from our sages about one of the very first Jewish leaders who ever existed. Who was the number one Jewish leader, the very first? Abraham was the father of the Jewish people. He wasn't really a Jewish leader. There was no Jewish people yet, Moses, right? And Moses was the quintessential Jewish leader. And who's after Moses? Joshua, or really before is Aaron, his brother. His brother was the same lifetime as Moses, but he was also like a leader in his own way. And they're actually a little bit different. Moses was a teacher. And Moses sometimes even had to speak a little bit tough love. He was a leader. Aaron, it says, he loved peace and he was a pursuer of peace. He came with a much more gentle and loving approach of leadership to the Jewish people. And our sages tell us what was his model of leadership and how he brought peace to the Jewish people. And just imagine, we all know how the Jewish people are complaining and fighting, right? You know what I'm talking about? This wasn't the best generation of Jews getting along with each other. You just imagine, right? And it always happens. I'm saying, can you imagine being stuck for 40 years in a desert? Right, we get sick of each other after a while, no? So two Jews could fight with each other, and there were even domestic disputes between husband and wife. right? Okay. What did Aaron do? Steve, right? Up to you?
Share.
Yeah, please share with us, Steve. Text 4, page 239.
When Aaron became aware that two individuals quarreled and had fallen out of each other, he would go and sit with one of them and say, "My dear, do you know what your friend is saying? He is utterly devastated and is tearing his clothes. He is saying, 'Woe is to me. How can I ever raise my eyes and look at my friend after what I've done to him? I am so ashamed for having wronged him.' Aaron would continue working with this person until he had removed the grudge from his heart. Aaron would then go and sit with the other party and say, 'My dear, do you know what your friend is saying? He is utterly devastated and is tearing his clothes. He is saying, 'Woe is to me. How can I ever raise my eyes and look at my friend after what I've done to him? I am so ashamed for having wronged him.' Aaron would stay with the second party until he had similarly removed the grudge from his heart. When the two individuals would later meet, they would hug and kiss each other in reconciliation."
All right. In other words, Aaron is playing
Both sides.
diplomacy. Right, that's a nice way of saying lying to everybody. Right? Is that what diplomats have to do? You lie a little bit here, then you go lie a little bit there, and you hope that in between nobody realizes they're pulling everybody's leg. Is Aaron lying to everybody over here? Meaning that, is this actually what happened? That they came to Aaron, one party said, I hate the fact that we're in a fight. Is this true? No. It's strongly implied that he's trying to get two people back on. So very noble cause over here. But it's a little bit deceptive over here, what he's doing over here, right? This is not the most honest line of work over here. It sounds like it always worked. But it's actually a pretty good, it's a pretty good, I'm saying it's a pretty good idea. Go to one, say, your friend, I know I got into a real bitter fight yesterday, but he cried to me, he loves you, he feels horrible this happened. You shuttle that message back and forth, and the next day the awkwardness goes away, and they both think that, whatever, okay. Is it conceivable that the great Jewish leader Aaron was running around lying to everybody? And by the way, even just think about it practically, how long do you think you could pull this off for? At some point, someone's going to figure out they're just pulling everybody's leg over here, right? Just imagine, if you want to be a little bit creative, imagine with me for a moment. Imagine it goes to two guys, one guy buys it, the other guy doesn't buy it. And then you see each other the next day. The guy who bought it, he's ready to embrace his friend. And the other guy is like, what are you talking about? This is awkward. And then the guy figures out that Aaron was pulling his leg. Now we don't like Aaron either. So what's really going on over here? What's really going on over here is that it wasn't that Aaron was lying. It wasn't that Aaron was lying. The real truth is, it is true. Whenever two Jews are in a fight, their animal souls maybe have a lot of resentment and anger, and they're holding that grudge, and I hate the guy. But the godly soul really does feel this way. I'm in pain. I don't like this separation. What Aaron would do is he would sit with each party and try to schlep out from them a little bit that voice from the godly soul. And say the real truth is that your friend, yes, the animal soul is in a fight with you, but really there's a little voice inside of him that's crying. He really wants to know you, and he really wants to be friends with you again. It was true. He wasn't lying. He was helping them get in touch with a certain truth. And that's why it worked. It worked because he was clinging onto a truth. We could all do the same. Forgiveness in Judaism is this model. We are not forgiving because it's in our best interest necessarily. We're doing this because this is the most right thing. It's a noble spiritual cause. It's not healthy. And therefore, forgiveness is very not self-centered in Judaism. It's part of a much larger process, which is about it's not healthy, it's not okay that two people are in such a fight, and especially two Jews. That's where the mitzvah is. There's a mitzvah in the Torah that we need to work through these issues. Now, you're going to say, 1 second, what if there was serious abuse? What about if somebody stole a lot of money from me? What, you want me to just start going forgiving people? No, we'll see. There's room for a lot of nuance over here. But the idea is this is something we need to work through this. This is not healthy. This is not natural. And therefore, even if there was pain over here, there has to be a process. And that process is all about looking at it from the perspective of our godly soul. That's what Aaron did. The pursuer of peace, what Aaron was doing was he was appealing to the divine soul. And that's the model that we want to go with today, which is very deep, which is very, very deep. How do we bring our godly soul, our divine soul to the table and approach the process of reconciliation and forgiveness, and possibly the future of the relationship from there. So, dear friends, we have a little bit right now the philosophical underpinnings of the art of forgiveness from a uniquely Jewish perspective, which is very unique. I don't think, right, Karen, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think this is the model in psychology today, right? I think the animal soul's voice is a little bit more the going theory in modern psychology. But Judaism says, no, that's true, but let's also go a little bit deeper, right? Am I right about that? I'm right. Yeah, okay, maybe. What was it? You want to correct me?
Moshe did something to let him speak to the rock, not speak to the rock, whatever it was. He asked Hashem for forgiveness, and he begged. Hashem said no.
You need to have a meeting with Marshall. No, I mean, this is a great question. I have not yet found a good satisfactory answer for sure to satisfy Marshall's. But the real truth is we have to keep on working on it. It's a good question. I'm absolutely not going to reject that question. It's a good question. I'm sure there's a good answer. We got to do the research. But we're working there. We'll make like a little summit. We'll have to meet, bring the research team in, think about it, discuss it. Okay, but it's a good question. What can I tell you? It's a good question. Okay, dear friends, and with this, I want to right now get to the formula in Judaism, how Judaism very, very clearly delineates, it codifies even as a code of law, what is the process when there's a fallout. And by the way, it's actually very empowering to know that there's an exact formula. Here's what you got to do. Here's how to approach it. Step number one in the formula is like this. There's a story. Once a guy, he had a problem every single day. He would come home from work, and before you know it, at some point, him and his wife, they're bickering, they're fighting. They don't even know anymore what they're arguing about. But every single day, day in, day out, they just can't help it. There's going to be some argument and quarrel, and it's become part of what's happening at home. So he goes to his doctor. He is a psychologist, and he says, "Just help me out over here. This is getting out of hand. You know, it's like a habit anymore. Even if we have nothing to fight about, we just start fighting. Will it snow tomorrow? Yes, no. Well, I checked the weather app. No, the wrong weather app. Right? What do I do?" So the psychologist says, "This is my idea for you. As soon as you get home from work, go straight to the kitchen. And I went to get a glass, fill it up with water, and the whole afternoon, the whole evening, even in your bedroom, I want you to have this cup of water at immediate arm's length." Really? Cup of water. Okay. So you're sitting on the couch in your living room, you're watching TV. It has to be right there on the side table, like right there. I don't want it not in the kitchen, right there. And then you're going to go upstairs to your bedroom. It's right there on your night table, right there. And the second you sense that your spouse is starting to cook up something, you take it and you fill up your mouth with it and you swish it in your mouth. He says, "For how long?" He says, until there's 60 seconds of silence. Just keep on counting. And as soon as there's any sound, you start counting again. I need a full 60 seconds, then you can swallow that cup of that. How am I going to breathe? You're breathing through the nose. You don't dry. That water staying in your mouth until you get a full 60 seconds of silence. And he's like, all right. He does it. A week later, he comes back. He says, "Doctor, this is brilliant. What's the trick of the water?" So he says, the water is not the trick. It's your mouth. We got him, your mouth shut. That's it. Okay. It's a cute joke, but it's actually there's a very big truth over here. There is the legitimate, perhaps legitimate, but let's even say it's 100% legitimate, the opening of a disagreement, of a fight, and one party, either if it's out of frustration or whatever it is, lights a fuse. Okay, right? This is the first spark of right now, a lot of pain and hurt that's going to start building up right now. One person says something in a relationship. Then what does the next person do? You say a little bit more, right? We're starting to feed that fire. And we're creating this cycle. It's a continuous loop. And as that fire is moving through this loop, as we keep on saying more things, that fire is getting bigger and bigger. And last week you did this, and no, oh, you were quoting me wrong, right? It builds up. Now, what's the very big problem over here? The problem over here is two things. Number one, people say very stupid things when they're upset. That's the way we are. When we get upset, literally our brain gets heated up, we could feel it, and we start losing a little bit of control. And things that we really don't want to say start being said. That's the danger of speaking when we're upset. And number two, not only are we susceptible or allowing the other person to say things that are just going to create a lot of damage here? But speech adds fuel to fire. Think about any emotion. Whenever you're feeling something, the moment you speak about it, it magnifies and it amplifies that emotion. So if you're happy and you pick up the phone and you speak to your friend about how happy you are, you're going to feel even happier. And if you're stressed and you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to tell somebody how stressed you are, you're going to get even more stressed. And when somebody's angry and they start speaking about it, and you feed that conversation, what then happens? Not only you're letting this prolong, but you are actually making the anger become stronger and stronger. The issue is becoming a bigger issue as we speak. And therefore, the number one step, which is actually, it sounds so simple, but it's a really difficult step, is the number one step to forgiveness and reconciliation. Starts at the very beginning. Let's read text number 5. Elisa, page 241.
241. Remaining silent. The world endures only because of those who choose to remain silent during the war.
There you go. It takes such bravery because you gotta you gotta take a little bit of the abuse, so to speak, right? You're gonna swallow it. You're just gonna, okay, somebody's accusing you of something or this, and you want to answer back and defend yourself. No, it's a hard thing, but you know what? The whole world endures because of such people. Because what we're doing is we are stopping the cycle of fire. We gotta stop it. And the way you stop it in the middle of its loop is by one person zipping it right there. Yes?
So, Rabbi, I was thinking using the example of siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So, set up an example of them not speaking to each other, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think more typically what probably happens, and they'll speak, but they actually act as if nothing has happened before. And in that case, one or probably both of them festering that anger.
I'm going to get to that right now, in a moment. A very, very good point. But I'm talking, even before that, there's probably this awkward relationship because at one point they had a tough relationship, they had a tough conversation, and there's maybe some accusations and some betrayals, whatever it was, right? And problem number one is that conversation went on too long. And this hurt that's present right now between these two parties could be a lot smaller if the conversation was stopped 20 seconds in versus allowing it to go for 7 minutes. That's 7 minutes of this fire burning more and more out of control. So the first thing, which is a very healthy preventative measure and already ensures that we're on the best, from the get-go, we're in the best position is let's stop it right away. Now, this doesn't mean, some people hear this and they say, okay, so that means let's just swallow it, let's just make as if nothing happened, I'm not going to answer, and that's it. No, that's not what we're saying over here. We do want to address it, but right now in the moment of anger is a bad time to address it. Last week, if you remember, we quoted the words of our sages, don't try calming somebody down in the moment of their anger. Remember that? Reader's Digest says, in human history, nobody ever calmed down from being told, calm down. Is that true? One of the most out-of-touch things we can ever say, which we all do say, is calm down. What, you're telling someone to calm down, they're upset. What do you mean calm down? Literally, that's exactly what our sage is telling us. Don't do. So you want to work through an issue with somebody while they are in the moment of their heat. Bad timing. All you're doing is fueling a fire. And our sages tell us this. It's a very strong psychological truth. When somebody's in that moment of emotion, they are not in a position to resolve that emotion. Just don't do it now. What is the best thing to do? Zip it. Now, who should zip it? Which side should zip it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The responsibility is on both parties. Whoever has the courage to do it first, do it. And whoever does it first, you are saving yourself a lot of anguish by doing it. Very, very simple thing. Take a look in your books on page 241. Here we're going to slowly update this chart. Number one, process of forgiveness is that one party chooses to terminate the active quarrel. You simply have to stop the activity. Now, as Elisa just said, right now what's going to happen tomorrow is that we're going to be in a very awkward space. Because we just had a little bit of a fallout, we had a fight. We did not actually deal with the issue. What really just happened was one of the parties kind of just shut down the active conversation of it. And this is actually not a good position that we're in right now. Because right now, both parties are holding in a little bit of a grudge. Right? It's always awkward after you had a little bit of a tough time with somebody and then you see them the next day. You're not sure, right? It's like a lukewarm high, like, are we on good terms? We're not on good terms. We had a little bit of a very, very awkward conversation yesterday, right? This is not a good space. So Judaism is not advocating that right now, let's just don't talk about it. Like, shove it under the rug, make as if it never happened. Let's not deal with, I once had to work with a doctor about an issue, about a much larger issue, not about, and it came up the issue of should we minimize the issue and make the issue smaller? I'm not going to get into the whole history, but it was a fascinating case that I somehow got involved with. I had to work with a very big doctor out of Johns Hopkins medical school out of, not Washington, Baltimore. And he was a big professional. And it was, we were discussing how do we deal with certain issues. Should we minimize it or should we kind of address it all the way out in the open? And he's like, listen, Levi, you're a Russian through and through. He's like, he gives me my whole family yichus. Your grandfather, your grandparents from this side are Russian, and from that side, you're like Russian through and through. And you Russians, you like throwing everything into the closet. Never happened. Let's just he's like, I'm an American. We got to deal with issues. Let's just deal with it. Let's not shove it under the rug. And he was right. It was the right thing to do. It was just, it was funny. He gave me a little bit of a lesson about myself. Is that right, Alex? No? A little bit? I don't know. That's what he said. He's like, the Russians, and nothing's an issue. Shh. I know that today that's also a controversial thing, but I'm speaking about the whole, right, the former union. Okay, well, it's true, Ukraine. Okay, all right. Judaism is not saying let's just, let's put it into the closet, let's just forget about it. That's not what we're saying. We do have to deal with it. But now, when we're upset, is not the right time to work with it.
So what if you deal with it and you ask forgiveness?
We're not there yet.
The person will not forgive you.
So let's get there.
And that's it.
We're going to get there. But that's jumping a few steps. But I want to get there. Yeah, you're right. We should get moving over here. Okay, let's move along.
I wasn't implying that.
All right, no, don't worry. This is the idea. This is a sensitive time, by the way, in the time right after the hurt, while before we are dealing with it. We're not yet at the stage of dealing with it, but this is a time, first of all, let's go back to lesson number 4. Try to mentally focus on the positive of the other person. That's a very big part of relationships in Judaism. Focus on the positive, see the positive in the other. Don't focus on the negative so much. And try to keep the relationship as stable as possible. And what we are looking for is the next step. The next step, number 2, is we want to deal with it. In Judaism, we are not looking to just shove this under the rug and have this resentment and have these grievances last for years and years and years and years, and then it just gets bottled up, and that's really, really bad. And then you even pass it on to your children and then to their children, and eventually nobody even knows why we don't talk to each other. But I don't know, written in our family traditions that my family doesn't speak to your family type of thing. No, that's not good. We don't want to have that. I don't know if it ever gets that extreme here in Detroit, right? But there definitely are things that, grandchildren will not speak to the other guy's grandchildren because, it's kind of passed down already. This is a multi-generational issue over here. Okay, tradition. You got to keep up tradition. Tradition is very important. Okay. Here is the idea. We want to move on. How do we move on? Best case scenario is the person that made the issue, the person who caused pain to the other, should be the one to man up or woman up and speak up and say, I want to openly, I want to, transparently share with you my regret and ask for forgiveness. But if that doesn't happen, Judaism says it's even a responsibility upon the victim, the one who was hurt, to initiate, which means you can't say, that's not my problem. You were the one who caused pain. You got to be the one to come and ask me for forgiveness. I'm not going to come to you. No, Judaism says no. It doesn't matter who did it. Both parties have responsibility to bring this issue to the table. Now, once again, ideal is for the offender to be the one to initiate this conversation. But even if not, if a week goes by and, even if you're the victim, you should be the one to speak up. And that is the next thing we're doing. We don't want to bottle up any of these grievances And the longer we wait, the more awkward and difficult it's going to be to do it. And this is a bad time. We don't want to be in this position of holding on to this grudge. So, Jewish law tells us, text 6, page 242, give us a little bit of a read, Sheldon.
Text 6 or text 7?
6.
Text 6. Reprove, don't resent. When someone wrongs us, we should not harbor silent resentment. Rather, it is a mitzvah to inform them and to inquire, why did you do such and such to me? Why did you wrong me this way? This obligation is stated in the passage, we shall surely reprove your fellow.
Amazing. It's a mitzvah. There's not just a mitzvah to ask for forgiveness. You have a mitzvah. Even as a victim, you have a mitzvah to not harbor resentment in your heart. And what that means is you have a responsibility, even though, why isn't my responsibility? I was the one who caused the hurt. You have a responsibility to go and say, I want to speak to you. What you said to me last week really caused me a lot of pain, and I want to discuss it with you. That is a way to do it. Communicate about it, and you need to get it off your chest. That is number 2, to speak up. Don't harbor silent resentment. You got all that noise living inside your brain. Get it out of your system. Not for the sake of just getting it out, but for the sake of, let's move this forward. Communicate it. Make sure we're on the same page. This goes against a very, very big myth. A lot of people say, why should I be petty? You want me to bring up old things, and they're going to look at me as being immature. I'm going to bring up old problems. Let me just brave it up. I'll deal with it. I'll work through it. I'll be brave. I'm not going to have to, I think that's kind of how we tend to think about it. Let's not make issues. Let's not rock the boat. I need to go and start calling people. You hurt my feelings last week. What are we, kids over here? But Judaism says no. That's a very bad idea. It sounds mature. It's actually creating a very long-term problem. Because now we got all this bad energy. It's bottled up. Our spouse now doesn't want to speak to their spouse because this just creates a lot of bad stuff going on. The mitzvah is this needs to be spoken about between these two parties in a helpful way. Okay. So don't be silent on this. Speak up about it. Okay. Jewish law tells you, could you forgive on your own without speaking to the other person? Unilateral forgiveness? Can you say, you know what, I'm actually willing to forget it. I don't want to start calling the guy up and, you hurt my feelings. I don't want to do that. Could you do that? It's Jewish law. So the text we just read from Maimonides, it seems like, no, you got a mitzvah to speak up. But Jewish law actually says that if you are 100% sure that you could fully forgive this person wholeheartedly in your heart, with full sincerity, and you really will not have a grudge, even a tiny grudge, then you could do that. And maybe in some cases, actually a good thing. But don't try doing it if you're not going to be 100% sure that you could really rid yourself of that grudge. The worst thing is to have the grudge. Yes?
Doesn't that depend on whether you're the offender or the victim?
No. So if you're the victim, if you're the victim, you could forgive them without initiating conversation. If you're the victim. Which means like this, and this is especially true. Let's actually read this quickly in text 7, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. Alex, text 7, page 243.
Unilateral forgiveness. We may, if we wish, unilaterally forgive an offending party without consequence. Indeed, this is an act of piety. The Torah is directed to raise the matter in marital insistence against harboring emotional hostility.
Okay, so if you could have this act of piety and really wholeheartedly forgive the offending party, that's good. But you got to make sure that there's no emotional hostility, it says over here. We're not holding on to that. So I think that's actually a very good thing if we were really able to do that for some more trivial slights. Like, for example, this is somewhat common. You thought you're friends with somebody, and then you found out that they just did a party, graduation party, and you happened to not get the invitation. That's pretty offensive, no? That's hurtful. That's hurtful. All right, you made a bas mitzvah, I didn't get the invitation. What happened? I thought we're friends. I invited you to my kids' bas mitzvahs. Practically, what probably happened?
Oversight.
It was oversight. I got to invite 250 people. Literally, it doesn't mean that you're less important. I invited people who I'm a lot less friendly. Just for some reason, it was a blind spot. I just somehow forgot about your name. Now, you still carry a lot of pain. That was really painful. I wanted to get the invitation. I don't know if I would have showed up, but I wanted to get the invitation. Right? No, but it's true. One second. I'm chopped liver over here? No, okay. Now, the real truth is, we should try to use this, what we just read in text 7 for these types of cases. You know it wasn't personal. You know that And as much as there's a lot of pain with that, there's a lot of hurt. I'm very offended. I'm deeply offended. So that could be a very good thing to do. They didn't mean it. There's maybe something very healthy about trying to find within yourself the strength to say, you know what, I forgive you. I'm not going to hold on to this resentment at all. But if you're not sure about it, what Jewish law says is we need to confront it as much as we don't like confrontations. And we need to be realistic. We need to be realistic about this. If we're going to be sensitive and we're going to hold on to this, and then a year from now we're going to be like, oh, you didn't invite me to the party. I'm going to think twice if I'm going to invite you to my party. No. Then you got to bring it up. You have to bring it up. That's step number 2. Speak up. And this in your books on page 243. This is step number 2. If the offender fails to initiate reconciliation, then the victim has the mitzvah to bring it up, convey the feelings to the offender. And here comes step number 3. Step number 3 is actually a little bit of an emotional, internal step. This doesn't happen so much in communication terms. This is more personal. Step number 3, which is very, very critical, is this is now back in the court of the offender. Step number 3 is for the one who did the hurt. By the way, in many of these cases, both sides did something wrong. In some cases, both sides are both the victims and the offenders. That's very often what happens, right? Maybe one was the initiator of it, but then another, brings out the worst in us sometimes. Okay, that happens. The next step is that part of the mitzvah that we have, the halachic process is the offender needs to take full responsibility. Full responsibility. Fully own up to what happened, and that happens a lot internally. And that is something which is about us being very honest with ourselves. Let's read text 8, a bit of a longer text, page 244. Max, give us a read over here.
It is a human tendency to justify our wrongful acts, even when we are aware that our justification is not truthful. We tell ourselves that our actions were just and good, or we at least find an excuse for our wrongful behavior. Such self-justification is self-destructive. If we commit a wrong, whether it undermines our relationship with God or disrupts our relationship with a fellow mortal, then as long as we are aware that we behaved wrongly, we will, eventually, when our hearts are inspired, repent. We will regret the past, uproot the former desire, and truly accept upon ourselves not to repeat such folly. All of this can only occur if we acknowledge our error. Conversely, if we justify ourselves, we feel as though we did no wrong. In that case, we will fail to repent and remain tainted and sullied with sin. Flawed self-justification stems from the natural soul, which is naturally animalistic.
There you have it. The animal soul, when it has to confront the fact that it did something which was not 100% okay, what does it start telling itself? It wasn't so bad. And it starts rationalizing what happened, which we all do all the time, right? Okay, I once heard, what is rationalize? Is really 2 words. Rational lies. Right? We're essentially lying to ourselves. We're making up stories for why what we did is kind of okay. And Judaism says, no, one problem. For this process to move forward, if you did wrong, you got to be honest. You got to be real. It's okay. We're human. We're not going to beat you up for it. But you got to be real with yourself. What you did was wrong. What you did was wrong. Don't start looking for rationalizations and justifications. And I was wrong, but no buts. Just accept full responsibility. And with that, that's step number 3 over here. Simply own up to it. Simple as that. And that is, it's not yet about the speaking process. This is part of the speaking process. Which means you can't ask for proper, sincere forgiveness if you're going to start coming with rationalizations because you yourself don't even think you did anything wrong. No. It has to be wholehearted. I want to show you a video. This is a cute little video to walk us through this idea. You ready?
Yesterday, Noah and Mia argued over their parenting styles. As this disagreement escalated, Noah blurted out,
"I don't have time for your emotional baggage. You're lucky I put up with you. Why can't you be like Jack's wife, Rachel?"
Today, Noah and Mia want to put that silly altercation behind them. But Noah finds apologizing difficult and is using strategies to avoid responsibility. We'll replay the scene several times. Whenever Noah uses an avoidance tactic, we'll buzz him and delete that instinct from his emotional catalog. While this doesn't work in real life, seeing where Noah goes wrong can help us get it right.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Oh, come on, Mia. You're being overly dramatic. It wasn't a big deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Noah minimized his mistake. Let's delete that and rewind.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Believe me, I didn't want to be harsh, but your tone left me no choice. You pushed me over the edge.
Noah blamed the person he insulted. Delete and try again.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Are you serious? So many men treat their wives terribly. You should be thankful for how well I treat you. You have it good.
Noah highlighted greater flaws elsewhere to downplay his error. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Mia, you needed to hear it for your own good. The truth sometimes hurts. I only said that because I care.
Noah invoked a higher value to justify his error. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. But I had a rough day at the office, and my back pain didn't help. Understand my situation.
Noah blamed external factors instead of taking responsibility. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Mia, I didn't mean what I said. It came out wrong.
Perhaps a bit better, but Noah is still denying responsibility. They both know it was a jab, so denying it adds insult to injury. Delete. To avoid these common pitfalls in denying responsibility, recall that at your deepest identity, you are a divine soul, a part of God, the essence of truth. The next time a self-justification springs to mind, let your soul guide you. Ask yourself, is my justification accurate? What would God say? What does my soul say?
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
You're right, Mia. I'm really sorry for what I said. It was untrue and unfair, and I could see how much it hurt you. I want to be better, and I'll work on not letting my frustration get the best of me.
Noah takes full responsibility without making excuses, deflecting, or minimizing Mia's feelings. Well done. Recalling your inner divinity empowers you to acknowledge mistakes and take responsibility. This noble attitude ensures your relationships ring with only positive buzz.
That's a nice video, no? What was that? Painful, huh? Yeah, I hear. Okay. So this is the idea. This is number 3. This is critical. The offender must take responsibility. And with that, then we're up to the next step. So this is internal. It's also verbal. The offender has to share now with the victim full responsibility and show that they owned up to it. But then that's not enough. A very big part of the process, according to Judaism, according to Jewish law, is that right now the offender can't just say, yeah, I take full responsibility, what I did was wrong, etc., etc. Right now there is a requirement to, the fancy word is to placate, to appease, to use your words, to truly try to win over the other person's heart and work on repairing that hurt. And that is something which takes a lot of hard work. There's a mandate to placate. And let's read that in text 9a. Anna, would you like to read page 246?
Requested forgiveness. One who inquires another is obligated to provide 5 kinds of compensation. Even after providing this payment, God will not forgive until the offender requests forgiveness from the victim.
Okay, this is talking about physical hurt. If you go and you break somebody's leg, God forbid, none of you. There's 5 types of restitution, compensation, that the Torah obligates you to pay. Medical bill, shame is one of them, lost work, etc., etc. There's 5 areas. Beyond all of those, you can't just pay the money and say, listen, I paid my thing, I broke your leg, I paid you the money, now we're square. No, not enough. Jewish law says you need to now verbally ask forgiveness, and you need to placate. You need to even be a little bit creative. Anna, you could read text 9b as well. Page 247.
Okay. One who vexes another, even if only verbally, is to placate the victim.
Which means we have to go find words to say that will alleviate their pain and make it easier for them to accept the apology and to be willing to enter the relationship again. That is one of the requirements of the offender. It's not enough to just say, I'm sorry. You know, it's like with little kids. Come here, say I'm sorry. Say I forgive you, right? It's not lip service. There's a real thing. You need to help this other person's heart heal. If you hurt somebody's feelings, that's the way it works. Jewish law is so strong on this that Jewish law actually says you need to go and do multiple attempts. What happens if you hurt somebody's feelings and they're very hurt, they feel deeply betrayed, and you go to them once and they say, no, I'm not willing to forgive you. What do you do then? Judaism says you need to go 3 times. Let's read this. This is very heavy. Text 10, page 247. Elki.
More than once. If the victim is not mollified on the first try, the offender should return and attempt a second time, using a different approach. If the victim is still not placated, the offender should return and attempt a third time, using a third approach. After the third attempt, the offender need not pursue the matter any longer. If an offender decides to be extra stringent, additional attempts are permitted.
3 times. And not just 3 times, but each time you have to come creatively with a whole different angle. How are you going to appease this other person? And show them that, number one, you're 100% sincere, that you really feel the remorse. How do you do that? This part of, yeah, go ahead.
It looks like the step number 2, number 3, and the first step number 4 are all on the offender. And who's to say that the offender is going to do any of those? And what happens if the offender does not?
Oh, okay. That's a very, very good question. There's no question about it. It takes 2 to reconcile. It takes 2 to fight. It takes 2 to reconcile. And that's 100% true. Then you have to do your part. But we have to try to do our part. Now, listen. If the other person is not willing to do their part, then of course it's going to be difficult to resolve this in a good, healthy way. But assuming there's a relationship that hopefully we have goodwill, which not always is the case, this is the way how to go about it. But we have to do our part. We have to try doing our part. But 100%, if the other person is just digging in their heels and they're not even willing to come, then it's unfortunate. And as I said, this not always going to apply to every single case. But this is the proper Jewish way that when 2 Jews are in have a fight or have a disagreement, have some beef, this is the responsibility of both people how to come through it.
What happens if the offender thinks that he is the victim?
Then, first of all, that is actually possible. Not always. They should do their part then. Say, I want to share with you how you hurt me. And, then it's... And hopefully you can get to a place where it's not about a power struggle of who could come out on top over here, but it's hopefully could create an environment of goodwill. That's a very big part of it. We learned about it by one of these classes, that relationships work very, very much as a reflection. When you bring a certain energy to a conversation, the other person very often mirrors that back to you. So if you come and you're hot-headed and you're coming with your ego and you're looking to win a power struggle, all you're going to do is arouse that power struggle in the other as well. But if you come with a lot of transparency and a lot of humility, very often actually you could actually pull that out from the other person and get them to actually lay down their guard. But 100%, I'm not going to say this is not difficult. This is very difficult. It takes a lot of bravery from both sides, and not always is it possible. But we have to do our part. That's ultimately what it is. But yeah, the reality is that we can't control these. Yeah, it takes 2. It takes 2. But this is the idea. There's a real responsibility not just to ask for forgiveness, not just do lip service, but to really try to bring an emotional appeal in a conversation, to really show and to help move along this process. Okay, that's step number 4. The offender engages in an effort to placate the victim, which may include multiple attempts. By the way, just to show you how serious this is according to Jewish law, if somebody offended somebody and they never went to ask for forgiveness and they never went to appease them the way halacha tells us to in their lifetime, so what happens now? The guy's dead. According to Jewish law, you have to go to their grave. You got to bring a minion along with you, all right? It gets heavy business. You got to bring a minion with you to the grave. You need to stand by the grave and speak to them these words. Whatever you would have told them to try to ask for forgiveness, own up, and try to alleviate their pain in their lifetime, you need to say that to their grave. That is the process. Now, of course, you're not going to get a response back, but halakhically, this is your responsibility towards this other person, even after they died. That's something you have to do, which is pretty heavy. There's not a lot of things that Judaism says now you got to start doing things after they died. This is something that even after death you need to do. That moves us to the next step. If the offender truly, sincerely comes and shows that they want to ask for forgiveness and they're doing it properly, then now the responsibility is on the victim to respond in kind and help close this chapter. And that's the next step. Let's read text 11. Lewis, page 249.
Once the offender has requested and pleaded for the victim's forgiveness, and the victim knows that the offender has indeed repented of the sin and regrets the wrongful act, the victim should forgive.
There you go. If, the big if is, if the offender is showing real, sincere regret, not just lip service, not like what we saw in the video, right? If you were offended, I didn't mean to offend you, but if you took it offensively, I ask forgiveness, right? The moment they're starting to do mental acrobatics to minimize what happened over here, no. Then no. But if there's a real, sincere effort, you shouldn't be the one to then say, no, I'm not going to forgive you, and just to prolong the issue. The mitzvah is that when you see sincerity from the other one, even if there was a lot of hurt, you should offer forgiveness. And this is the next step. They're called to forgive. Okay, now, we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to show it to you. Forgiveness doesn't have to mean that we're becoming besties now. There's two stories in the Torah. One is Abraham and Sarah with the king Avimelech, the king of the Plishtim, the king of the Philistines, which is actually exactly the area of modern-day Gaza. Okay. Abraham and Sarah, they're traveling through the area. They come across King Avimelech, and the very first thing that he gets asked is Sarah your wife? Is she single or is she married? Okay. In short, Avimelech abducts Sarah. God does a miracle, and they figure out right away that they just got themselves in big trouble. The next day, Avimelech returns Sarah to Abraham and asks for an apology. Abraham grants him forgiveness, says, yes, I accept your apology, I forgive you. And they closed that tab. This wasn't forgiveness to now say, okay, now let's party together. Now let's start hanging out more together. No, this was forgiveness, and okay, we never need to see each other again. But forgiveness is still important. You see, forgiveness doesn't have to mean that right now we're still going to be best friends. Sometimes forgiveness, maybe the hurt actually was deep enough that maybe the best step right now is we do need to part ways. But forgiveness is still important. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, without getting to the exact story, Moses with the Jews sometimes were really not nice to Moses. But Moses ultimately goes and forgives the Jews. When Moses forgives the Jews, he's not doing like Abraham, okay, I forgive you and goodbye. Right? I never want to see your face again. That's not what he's doing. Moses is coming and saying, no, after he forgives the Jews, he goes and begs God forgiveness for those Jews. And he continues being the loving leader that he is. And that's two different models. This becomes a spectrum. And the point is, forgiveness doesn't have to mean that the relationship is back on. It doesn't mean it's all intense. Now it's already a very open space. Forgiveness needs to happen no matter what, according to Jewish law. Now, but what's going to happen to the relationship post that? Okay, there's a very wide spectrum. And this is something which needs to be figured out case by case. Where are we going to be going forward? But even if, in this situation, we're not going to be hanging out more, the relationship is kind of over, forgiveness is still a very, very important thing. And at some point, somewhere between the spectrum is where relationships land post this. Ideally, relationships which are good and healthy, and there was just a moment of hurt and betrayal, but when there's a sincere desire from both sides and a sincere forthcomingness from both sides, very often the relationship doesn't only survive it, but it actually deepens it. It creates a lot more trust when post a hurtful episode, even a betrayal episode. There's real transparency, real openness, and both sides are really, really sincerely coming to the table and saying, I want to get over this. When you take full responsibility, that actually does give the opportunity for a much deeper form of relationship, which is also something which we learned about earlier. Post-disagreement, right, the day number 3, that comes after day number 2, and day number 3 is greater than even the day number 1 before the problem. So there is that idea that even, not just forgiveness, but even growth that could come afterwards. Okay, we're already getting a little bit low. Thank you, Louis. Okay. We're getting a little bit low on time, but I want to conclude quickly with one final last thought. Like everything, there's always exceptions to the rule. And as much as Judaism says that it's so important to come and address it and seek forgiveness, there's one very big and important exception. Let's read it in text 13, page 251. Rick, let's do it.
There is no need to forgive if you fear that some harm might befall you through granting forgiveness. After all, your own life takes precedence over the life of another.
If you suspect that you granting forgiveness is going to be creating a permissive environment for the person who hurt you to come and hurt you again, or that they're going to take your apology, they're going to take your clemency, your forgiveness, as a permissiveness for them to hurt somebody else. What's the case? I don't know, some kind of abusive case. And they're coming forgiveness, but you sense. Then Jewish law says, no. Then you don't need to forgive. Why? This is the basic rule, right? You protect yourself. For as big of a mitzvah forgiveness is, your own well-being is more important. Now, like everything, it's an important exception. We can't take it out of context, and we can't take it too far. But if there's a real concern, we feel, this is somebody that we need to protect the public from, or even protect myself from, and it's only going to put me in danger. We don't need to go into examples for this, but then it doesn't need to be given. That's the exception. If one is not expected to forgive, if it will result in harm to him or herself or even somebody else. Okay, dear friends, it's 9:03. That means we got to wrap up. I want to thank you all so much for joining this course. And I want to wish all of us, that this shouldn't just be an interesting class, an interesting course that we once took, but that we should really bring these ideas, these tools, these inspirations that our tradition gives us, really bring it to our real lives, and that we should be much better people, happier people, with much more special and quality relationships, and that we could really bring these values that the Torah gives us to life. We won't only be Jews by name, but we'll actually be living with the values that Judaism gives us in the way that we are a community member, a spouse, a parent, a child, everything, a good friend. All of that's going to be elevated. That's my blessing to all of you. May God bless you. This was so wonderful. Have a happy Hanukkah. Happy 2025 as we go into a new year. And we should only meet for many more happy, healthy, and joyful occasions together. And I look forward to seeing you soon at Decoding the Talmud. Let's get that. Decoding the Talmud. That's it. All right. That's what we got. All right. Give yourself a round of applause. Thank you.